Today, in our fourth extract from Diana's secret tapes, she talks about her deeply unhappy childhood, blighted by her parents' vicious arguments and subsequent divorce when she was just 7. Her mother Frances left her father for wallpaper tycoon Peter Shandkid and moved out of the family home in Norfolk Park House, next door to Sandringham to London. Frances had desperately wanted her children to live with her, but lost a bitter custody battle with Diana and her siblings Sarah, Jane and Charles caught in the middle. Here is what Diana said. The biggest disruption was when Mummy decided to leg it, in 1967. That's the vivid memory the four of us children have. We all have our own interpretations of what should have happened and what did happen. People took sides. Various people didn't speak to each other. For my brother and I, it was a very wishy-washy and painful experience. Charles, my brother, said to me the other day that he hadn't realized how much the divorce had affected him until he got married and started having a life of his own. But my other sisters, their growing up was done out of our sight. We saw them at holidays. I don't remember it being a big thing. I idolized my eldest sister, Sarah, 6 years older, and I used to do all her washing when she came back from school. I packed her suitcase, ran her bath, made her bed, the whole lot. I did it all and I thought it was wonderful. I soon learned that doing that wasn't such a good idea. I always looked after my brother, really. We had so many changes of nannies, because Daddy was a very attractive divorcee and he was good bait for somebody. We tend to think they came for that, rather than for looking after my brother and me. If we didn't like them, we used to stick pins in their chair and throw their clothes out of the window. We always thought they were a threat because they tried to take Mother's position. They were all very young and rather pretty. They were chosen by my father. It was terribly disruptive to come back from school one day to find a new nanny. It was a very unhappy childhood. Always seeing our mum crying. Daddy never spoke to us about it, we could never ask questions. Very unstable, the whole thing. At the age of 14, I remember thinking that I wasn't very good at anything, that I was hopeless because my brother was always the one getting exams at school and I was the dropout. I couldn't understand why I was perhaps a nuisance to have around, which in later years I've perceived as being part of the whole question of the child who died before me. It was a son, John, who died within 10 hours of his birth in 1960, and both my parents were crazy to have a son and heir. What a bore, we're going to have to try again. And then comes a third daughter. I've recognized that now and that's fine. I accept it. I adored animals, guinea pigs and all that. I had a mass of rabbits, guinea pigs, and hamsters. They all had names. In my bed, I'd have 20 stuffed animals and there would be a midget's space for me. They were all adored. That was my family. I used to hear my brother crying for my mother, he was unhappy too, and my father was right down the other end of the house. I never could pluck up courage to get out of bed. I remember it to this day. I remember seeing my father slap my mother across the face. I was hiding behind the door, and Mummy was crying. I remember Mummy crying an awful lot. Every Saturday, when we went up to stay with her and Peter Shandkid, for weekends, every Saturday night, standard procedure, she would start crying. We would both see her crying. What's the matter, Mummy? Oh, I don't want you to leave tomorrow, which, for a 9-year-old, was devastating, you know. I remember the most agonizing decision I ever had to make. I was a bridesmaid to my first cousin, and to go to the rehearsal I had to be smart and wear a dress. And my mother gave me a green dress and my father had given me a white dress. And they were both so smart, the dresses, and I can't remember to this day which one I wore. But I remember being totally traumatized by it because it would show favoritism. I remember there being a great discussion that a judge was going to come to me at Riddlesworth, my preparatory school, and ask who I would prefer to live with. The judge never turned up. Basically, we couldn't wait to be independent, Charles and I, in order to spread our wings and do our own thing. We had become horribly different at school because we had divorced parents, and nobody else did at that time. I always had this thing inside me that I was different. I didn't know why. I couldn't even talk about it, but it was there. The divorce helped me to relate to anyone else who is upset in their family life, whether it be stepfather syndrome or mother or whatever. I understand it. Birthdays were obviously a treat. My father once organized a dromedary to come along and give us rides around the lawn. He got it from Bristol Zoo. Birthdays were always a good time. Daddy loves parties. But there was still none of the arms round the shoulder, or hugging. It was always the other things. I always wanted a pram for my birthday and dolls. I was fiendish about the dolls and the prams. And I collected pieces of china. All sorts of fairytale things, and tiny little rabbits. I mean, anything that was small was wonderful, as far as I was concerned. I loved being at school. Although, because I was busy looking after my father most of the time, and then suddenly realized I was going to be away from him, back at school, I used to make threats like, "If you love me, you won't leave me here," which was jolly unkind to him at the time. I was very naughty in the sense of always wanting to laugh and muck about rather than sit tight in the four walls of the schoolroom. I remember school plays and the thrill of putting on makeup. I was a Dutch doll or something like that. My big moment. But I never put myself forward to speak in a play. I never read the lessons at school. If I was asked to do anything, my condition was I'd do it if I didn't have to speak. My first sporting cup was for diving. I won it 4 years running. I always won all the swimming and diving cups. I liked all subjects. History fascinated me. Tutors and stewards, I adored them. I never anticipated I'd end up in the system, in the books. In English, I loved Far From the Madding Crowd and Pride and Prejudice. But in O-levels, you were so besieged with every single line that it became a chore rather than a pleasure. I took 5, I got D for the lot. That's not even a pass. If I could study a subject now, it would be about people. The mind. Definitely the mind. I'd love to study psychology. At school, I played the piano. I did my tap dancing, which I absolutely adored, tennis, and I was captain of the netball team, hockey, you name it, because of my height. I was one of the tallest there. I visited old people once a week, went to the local mental asylum once a week. I adored that. It was sort of an introduction for bigger things. Then, by the time I got to the top of the school, all my friends had boyfriends but not me, because I knew somehow that I had to keep myself very tidy for whatever was coming my way. I had more girlfriends than boyfriends. I was always mucking about with girls. But I didn't really have any friends that stuck. I had crushes, serious crushes on all sorts of people, especially my sister's boyfriends. If they ever got chucked out from that department, I used to try my way. Moving to Althorpe was such a wrench. When I was 13, we moved to Althorpe in Northampton. That was a terrible wrench, leaving Norfolk, because that's where everybody who I'd grown up with lived. We had to move because grandfather died. And life took a very big turn because my stepmother, Rain, appeared on the scene. We all hated her so much because we thought she was going to take Daddy away from us. She was very clever and she wanted to marry Daddy, that was her target and that was it.